There are a few herons around in southern England, East Anglia, but not on the Hitchcockian level that Ubisoft have got them in on Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I am Couch Coop, and this is a look at the game on the PlayStation 5. A couple of months ago, I put this over on PC up against Odyssey. It was a versus. It was a strange thing because Odyssey has kept loads of that ship combat in. Valhalla's a very different animal, and I think it was quite shocking to a lot of hardcore Assassin's Creed fans with this change of environment. The whole thing is quite flat and built up areas are few and far between, and there's a different message with the metagame, which we'll get into because it didn't fall right with me when I first looked at it, but I've sort of dug a bit deeper with it. I'm on 25 hours. I want to see some mid or decent armor and weaponry, and more importantly, enemies. I felt the game was way too easy, particularly with that Viking horde helping you out at just about every monastery raid. Let's talk about its striking visuals and graphics and performance. This game is pretty slick looking now. I played it on day one on the PlayStation 5 and it was a bit higgledy with some of its performance. This is me going hell for leather. I'm trying to catch some pop in on distance, something that's going to say I'm performing badly, and there's nothing. It is impeccable and a real pleasure to play against some of its modern equivalents. Another heron flying overhead there. I've seen about 5 in my whole adult life, and I've lived in this part of the world most of my adult life. So I think there might have been a population difference. Maybe we killed a load of them off when the Industrial Revolution kicked in. Talking of revolutionary, the fishing, not going to push Stellar Blade off its pedestal, because you just got a rope and a bit of bait, and also the NPCs do not care, just like the ones in real life. But I was quite pleasantly surprised with the differential on the indigenous fish. I'm a big freshwater fisherman, especially when I was younger, so recognising all the species and seeing how diverse they are and where they're placed as well. Pike and perch are in here alongside some of the eels and bigger freshwater fish, so pretty cool stuff, and there's a reward system tailored to it. I completely overlooked that on first look of the game. It's also got a weird online avenge system going on, which I don't understand too well. I'm assuming that's if you kill an enemy that has got history within that server that has killed another player once upon a time before. Not sure if there's a cut-off or the reward. You just see a name ping up. I've just had that recently with Wulong, where you have a vendetta on particular bosses and you get a minor reward. We're just back to the indigenous life thing again, and this is like an ocelot slash wildcat slash giant leopard. Did not have those, not in the south, maybe up in Scotland. There were wolves and bears and all that sort of thing, but not ocelots. There will be a British paleo expert in the comments proving me wrong. There always is, but I think Ubisoft have a tough brief choosing one of the time periods and areas in the world where there wasn't massive indigenous threats. Going around and killing a load of stray cats would not have gone down well with the user base. Also want to cover why I'm talking about a game that's well over 2 years old. Mirage is also out and about and on the PlayStation 5. I really want to cover most decent single player games that are available on that system on the channel, so that there's an index of nearly everything. The terrible stuff that's not worth talking about won't obviously make it on, but everything else I want to give it its time in the limelight. I think as much fuss should be made about single player offline content as possible, and some of my most popular videos of all time on the channel a single player video game list. So it's a subject that's very close to my heart and applicable to the content I produce. Let's talk about what this game did to wind me up when I first looked at it. Now, it's nothing new for the Assassin's Creed game model to have a ranking system that means you may have to go off the main quest and do sub-quests to meet a criteria numerically to be able to continue with that main story. I know that sounds quite complicated. In short, that means you have to do other things other than that main campaign to reach this number, and it can be quite laborious. There's also monasteries in this particular game that that you just are so underpowered for you can't even go to them, and they're all over the starter section of the map. So it's all a bit off-putting, realizing how big that mountain is you've got to climb. Now, as if that wasn't enough, with Valhalla they've put in a system called River Raid, which is separate to the main campaign and any other side quests, but it does count to your supply, which is what you have to pump into the village, which is also another criteria for getting forward in that story. Sunshine on a Rainy Day clips, by the way, here. I'm not going to take the risk and put that song in again. I think I dodged a bullet the first time round with that Legion video. But back to my point, that river raid system is pretty laborious. You have to get in and out of the boat, you're going up to these monasteries, you're pulling out barely anything at the start. It's kind of like a run system where they get harder, you get exposed to different rivers within the UK that have got more loot in them. But from where you're sitting at the start of the game and you get told about all this, you're like, no way. But it's actually quite an interesting setup. There are some really cool items of loot to be had within that raid system, but I can totally understand how that really knocked loads of people back. You've probably been seeing it in the background of some of my blabbery already, but I am really in love with the way this game looks, particularly on that PlayStation 5. I ran it on some pretty decent settings on the PC, but there's something about that HDR, there's something about the resolution and frame rates pretty much all over the entire game. That is one of the more impressive areas of this PlayStation 5 version, and there have been a hell of a lot of patches. I will tag the video as the latest because this footage was got a couple of weeks ago. So briefly back to that raiding system, you have a bin of Vikings that you dip into to take with you, and you can purchase other ones. Get this, it's a server system that's a little bit like the Dogma pawn setup, so they've stolen that area, but it's damn cool because other users will make really cool Vikings that you then take with you and have noticeable amazing pieces of loot on them, a pearlescent shield or a massive glowing crystal dagger, the list goes on. Let's also talk about what they've done to this combat, because it is way different to Odyssey's, but also it's the same in larger areas, particularly with that button mapping, but it's also got the R2 and L2 specials. The L1 twang or clang or guard will result sometimes in an R3 like insta-kill, and it's like way too easy and obvious to use, and it's also a compulsory cutscene. By the time you've got 15 hours in, you're like, it's alright, I'll leave that, I'll just stab him and kill them the easy way without having that camera go crazy around everywhere. But when you instigate the flying tomahawks or even that leap and stab, the cinematics are pretty amazing for something that's all done in engine and real time during a raid. They have still kept the classic synchronization in, even though the peaks on this landscape are few and far between. I do enjoy having that map revealed, or even the battle to get up to the peak itself. It's pretty cool. That camera swinging around always satisfies, and they use it over on the Far Cry games in certain areas. I was always just concerned that this might be completely lifted out with the new game model, with Mirage or anything else. I think it's probably one of the mainstays of the whole series, and that brings me back to Mirage against this game model and what we're going to see in Shadows. I think Creed's combat is just metamorphosized so much that it's kind of hardly recognizable anymore, a little bit like the Star Wars franchise, and it's leaning more towards a Souls game. I don't think that's a bad thing, I just don't want them to lose their focus with it, no pun intended. It's a system that I enjoy within their open world games, and overcomplicating it or making it too much like some other video games I think would be a mistake. What we've got with Valhalla is interesting, but it does step in some dangerous areas, particularly with those easy R3 moves and sort of getting rid of a lot of that cool chained up Arkham combat that we used to see in older Assassin's games. seeing like recognizable city names and regions on that map is pretty amazing, and I'm sort of holding back on gallivanting around all of it at the moment because I just want to see what's supposed to be shown to me up until that section in the campaign. I actually have a massively cool Creed moment here, so I'll talk you through this. There's a dude I've got to assassinate in the middle. He's kind of got some guards around him. I'm taking the long way round, staying crouched in amongst the pigsty. That's how you want this. You know, you've got to get down and dirty with the farm animals and then pop out like some cold-blooded killer, because that was the last direction they expected you to come from. Also an NPC standing right next to him, oblivious to the whole thing. Some of the weapon differential and the one-to-one exchanges that come off the back of that is pretty amazing. I went from having 2 axes to a big two-handed broadsword, so no longer the shield on, and I was very impressed with how different the mechanics are with that hard and fast thrusting or even a shield bashing move. It was a very different outlook onto how combat operated, just from switching out two-handed to single-handed. This would have been overlooked if you only gave the game 5 to 10 hours, because there is no real loot. You have to upgrade what you're carrying at the smithy, and then once in a blue moon something new will turn up. Fighting this guy though, he's got no idea. I just finished the top. Souls like this, bro. I was really mean to this game in hindsight when it came out. I was very into Origins as well, which I'll link in the description. I happen to feel that's one of the stronger, more modern Assassin's Creed games out there. You might be an Odyssey fan, you might have even got into Mirage, so I'm really keen to hear back from you if you've approached that game on the PlayStation 5, how it performs, that sort of thing. Hold on, I think I'm going to get attacked by a pack of colossal Arctic wolves. Homework for this, I would go to the Norseman. I actually watched the original Robin Hood, Kevin Costner and Rickman. Don't know why, it's worth a watch just for Rickman, but I very much saw the parallels with the sort of witchcraft and that evil monster supernatural aspect. There's loads of it in Valhalla. There's sections that are cursed, that have got big bosses in them that you need high level gear to even approach. I kind of like that. Also, loads of explosions, loads of non-permanent structures going up. You don't see in a lot of Assassin's Creed games. Is this a good Assassin's Creed game? Yeah, I think it is. It's not as strong as its counterparts previous, be it Odyssey, be it Origins, be it Black Flag, but it certainly wasn't deserved of its ridicule on launch, and they did have a few stumbles with the patches. It's looking very good. Now, if you own a PlayStation 5, of course this is on Extra, and well worth a download.
I'm sorry to trouble you, Lord.
What have I got coming up? I think I may have found a split-screen racer, modern, to rival Dirt 5, and clue, it is a rally game. So keep your eyes peeled for that. I was Couch Coup, and I will see you down there.